last time we started talking about the period called the Rishonim. Right? The Rishonim literally means the early ones, right? Can anybody guess what the period after them is going to be called? Good, the later ones, right? The Achronim. Okay, we'll get to them. But the Rishonim, we talked about basically what years? Anybody remember? So they basically break up into 500-year segments, right? We said we had the rabbis of the times of the Mishnah who were called the Tanaim. We had the rabbis from the times of the Gemara who were called the Amoraim. Right, then we had the Savoraim and Gaonim, who you won't hear very much about. And then we have the Rishonim, and then we have the Achronim. Okay, the Tanaim were about the year, let's say up until 200 CE. The Amoraim were about 200 to 500 CE. Right? Then the Savoraim and Gaonim were about 500 years. The Rishonim were also about 500 years. And the Achronim were really starting from 1500 until today. Okay, this is really the last 2,000 years of 2,000 years of Jewish history. Yeah.
What was this again? I forget what these were.
These are, last time we talked about these are different periods in Jewish history, what the rabbis and the scholars of that period were called. So these were called a Tana, a person who lived in the time of the Mishnah. Plural is Tanaim. Right? And a Mora was somebody from the time of the Gemara. Right? A Rishon is somebody from this time period, 1,000 to 1,500. We mentioned people like Rashi, the Rambam, the Rashba, the Rashbam, the school of Tosafos, right? All of that was the period of the Rishonim, okay? And we really talked about last time, and we're going to continue today. You see I have some show and tell for you, right? We talked about what were the Rishonim trying to do. Now, one thing the Rishonim had to do was the same thing the Gemara had to do to the Mishnah, which is to explain it, to show we've learned this, and this is how we learned it. And since future generations may not know the whole Torah like we know it, or they may not have such clarity on how to learn it like we have, so therefore we are going to show you we're going to write down for you what we say about this, right? And so today when we study Chumash, when we study the books of the prophets, Navi, or Suvim, or when we study Gemara, and we say Rashi says, or the Ramban says, or the Ibn Ezra says, or the Sforno says, right? We're saying this is what the Rishonim wrote down when they learned this piece that we're learning. Okay? So again, whenever somebody hands out a sheet to you, and they say, well, it says in the Gemara, and Rashi's commentary there says, right, now you know what we're talking about. We know what the Gemara is. The Gemara is its name in Amoraim. And then you're reading Rashi's commentary. And of course there are differences of opinion in the Rishonim, just like there are differences of opinion in the Gemara, right? And we relate to differences of opinion in the Rishonim just like we relate to differences of opinion in the Gemara, that they're all true, right? They're all emes. We're just trying to figure out which one are we going to follow. Now, on that topic of which one we're going to follow, so we mentioned last time that until this time period, you had no way to look up a halakha. But if you wanted to look up a halakha, you had to learn all 2,711 pages of the Talmud, find everywhere that topic is discussed, which are not all clumped together in the same area necessarily, right? And then you had to understand all the different ways to understand that line of Mishnah or that line of Gemara that's discussing the topic you're discussing, and see if there are different opinions in the Gemara, and if so, figure out which one are we going to follow. Right? So you have to be a massive, massive, massive Torah scholar to be able even to look up a halacha, right? So we mentioned last time, at the end of last time, that came along three people, the Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh. Right? Again, remember we said these are all acronyms, right? Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, and Rabbeinu Asher, right? They came along and they wrote down their not only commentaries, but a listing of what is the halakha. right? Now, I explained them to you last time, but I'm actually going to show them to you today. All right? First of all, for completion's sake, this is a book of Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. This is one of the 6 orders of the Mishnah. It's a little version, so you can take it in your pocket and study it when you want to, right? Again, like every other text, the middle part is the Mishnah, and the part around is commentary, right? Commentary from people from the period of the Rishonim, right? So this happens to be, the one I pulled off the shelf, is the tractate called Nezikin. Anybody remember what that is? No, that's part of the written Torah. Remember the Mishnah, we said there were 6 orders, right? One of them is Nezikin, which is called damages. This is the 3rd of the 6. And so, for example, I'll just open to a Mishnah, right? It says here, a king is not allowed to be a judge, and he's also not allowed to be adjudicated. Like, you can't take him to the regular court system. And he can't give a testimony, and he can't be testified about, right, etc. Right? That's a Mishnah. Okay? So this is the Mishnah. Now, we already talked about this is the Gemara, right? And we talked about this is the Talmud. Whose commentary is this? On the inside of the page, Rashi, and this commentary is from the school of Tosfot, right? Very good. And so that's a page of Gemara. Unbelievable. You don't know what to look for on a page of Gemara. Yeah.
How much is a book like that?
What do you mean, how much is it? How much does it cost? With this version, I can tell you the price is probably still in it. No, it's not. This you could probably buy for about 40 shekels or something like that. 50 shekels.
How many are in
A lot. Right? Well, again, it depends how you buy them. Right? See, this is just one tractate. Some other volumes, like we have one in the library here, which is small, and has a whole bunch of volumes in one. Right? So if you buy it like that, then you only need like 6 books. Right? But if you buy it like this, you need about 60 of them. Right? So yeah, there are a lot of...
Because it's bigger print, it's bigger.
Well, and also they include more stuff in the back, more commentary in the back, which we're going to talk about in a minute, right? But so also there are different versions. Like this is a newer version, right? There are older versions. Again, the words are the same, right? Just they have different layouts and things like that. And some have English translations, right? The ones with the English translations are much more expensive, but you can buy those, right? And those, since they take up half the room is taken up by English, so then this volume could be 3 books. Right, so it's a lot, right? But we have, I think, some volumes in the library here. Right? There's a company called Art Scroll that has put out all of them with English translations, also with Hebrew translations, also I think with Russian and French translations and other things, right? So, yeah.
I just don't, the difference between the Gemara and the Mishnah?
So the Gemara is the explanation of the Mishnah, right? Remember we pointed out, were you here when I showed the Mishnah? Right, the Mishnah is a little tiny thing, right? This first Mishnah goes from this word down to here. And then the next 10 pages are Gemara explaining that Mishnah, right? So remember we said that when the Mishnah was written, it became the new standard, right? Like the gold standard of how you learn. You sit and you study a Mishnah. The Gemara is they wrote down all of the discussions that the Torah scholars had about when they were studying this Mishnah.
So that little book that you held up is without the Gemara?
Without the Gemara, just the Mishnah. So like I could look up, right, the same Mishnah that I just showed you here. I could show it to you in a book like this, but then it would just after that go into the next Mishnah, as opposed to the 10 pages of Gemara that are in here. Right, does that make sense?
So what's on the sides of it?
Commentary.
Oh.
Right, commentary from the time of the Rishonim. Right, different Rishonim, it doesn't have Rashi, right? But there were commentators who just dedicated themselves to commenting on the Mishnah, as opposed to commenting on the Gemara. Rashi commented on both, but you got to look in here to find his commentary. Any other questions? These are good questions.
Where's the Talmud coming into this?
Talmud is, what's Talmud? Good, right? This and this, the Mishnah plus the Gemara is the Talmud. Okay, the Mishnah was written by Tanaim, the Gemara was written by Amoraim. The two together are the Talmud. Okay?
What would be the summary and the Gemara?
They wrote commentaries. They were like the Rishonim. They wrote commentaries on the Mishnah and Gemara. We don't have a lot of their writings. Right, so unfortunately, from those 500 years of history, most of what we have is things that were quoted by the Rishonim saying, well, this person from the Gaon period wrote the following, but we don't actually have his original manuscript. Yeah?
I don't remember if you already went over, just Mishnah and Gemara like have meaning, like just the word?
Yeah, the word Mishnah means to learn. It comes from the word to learn. And the word Gemara comes from the Aramaic word. Sorry, the word Mishnah means to teach. And the word Gemara means to learn. Right? The word ligmor in Hebrew actually means to complete, which is an appropriate name for it also because it's the completion of the Talmud. But that word is Aramaic, the word Gemara. So it means to learn. Right? And again, the Mishnah were teachings given by Hashem to Moshe at Mount Sinai, at least part of it. Right? The Gemara is how people learned the Mishnah over the next 500 years or 300 years until that also got written down. Right? So when you study Gemara, you're actually studying the words of rabbis who sat and discussed the Mishnah. Right? And they said, what about this word, and what about this case, and what if we change this variable, and how come this Mishnah seems to contradict that Mishnah? Right? Maybe we misunderstood one of them. Right? All of that, and then somebody says, well, what about this case, which is slightly similar? Someone says, I think that's allowed. Someone says, I think it isn't. What's the reason for one who says it's allowed? What's the reason for one who says it's not allowed? That's what Gemara is like. Yeah.
So before they were showing, did they have books to look up and rewrite or make mass copies of so that it doesn't get lost?
Well, they had the Gemara. Right? They made the Talmud. They made mass copies of the Talmud. Remember, there was no printing press yet.
Right.
We'll get to when the printing press was invented. That was a major event, right? But until the printing press, right, they hand wrote them. I think I told you in the town of Vilna in Lithuania, right, where there were a lot of great Torah scholars, most notably the Vilna Gaon, the genius of Vilna, right, Rabbi Eliyahu Kramer. So the way they used to edit the Talmud is that the guy who was the scribe, right, would every day write one page of Talmud, and he would hang it on the outside window of his store. And as people walked up and down the street, they'd stop and look at the page, and they'd say, oh, there's a mistake there. And they would fix it. Because they all knew the Talmud. That's what they did. They studied Talmud, right? So they would recognize if there was a word that was wrong or a letter that was wrong, and that was how he edited it. Right? He just let the people edit it, right? I guess it was like the first, the predecessor to like Google Documents or things like that. Yeah.
Do we have like evidence of like the oldest Talmud? Like what is that?
Yeah, we have very old copies of the Talmud. I'm not sure what the oldest are. I know somebody here, and I don't know if there are people who like are collectors of very old manuscripts. Right? I saw once a Gemara that on both sides, remember I showed you, on the inside is Rashi and on the outside is Tosfos. Right? I saw a Gemara that had on both sides Rashi, because it was before Tosfos. Right? And therefore the whole pagination was different. Right? So, and like the numbers of the pages and everything were different. It was very, very old. Right? So we have things going I think almost all the way back to when the actual originals. Right? Yeah, and today we have so many manuscripts that, like for example, in this edition, I mentioned this is a newer edition. One of the advantages of this new edition, which was put out in the last 10 years, is that on the side here, they show you, like down here, right, when manuscripts have revealed a difference between different texts. That sometimes, like in very old manuscripts, right, they found that, you know what, this word, in some versions doesn't say Behatanya, it says Dehatanya, or something like that, right? And it tells you all of them. So we see all the times there was a discrepancy.
Are the commentaries different?
Yes. Yeah.
So if two rabbis have the same idea or thought, would they be on there, or would they pick the rabbi who had it?
Well, look, here, right, this is always Rashi, and this is always Tosfos. Now Tosfos had Rashi, and he knew Rashi was, people already had Rashi, so he doesn't just repeat what Rashi said, right? There are times that in different Rishonim that aren't on the page, right? Remember, I mentioned last time, we have other books. When we sit and learn in yeshiva, like our table often looks like this, right? Because we not only have this with Rashi and Tosfos on the side, but there are other Rishonim. You could have the book of the Ramban, right, on this tractate, on this Masechta, right? And I can look it up based on this page. I'm on page 15a. So therefore, what does the Ramban say on page 15a? And then I see what his commentary is, and he might say the same thing as Rashi, or he might say something different, or he might quote Rashi and then say, this is what I think Rashi means, right? Or he might quote Rashi and say, but there's another opinion, and and he might take sides, or he might not, right? So one of the things we do when we kind of get stuck, or when we want to look deeper into something that we've seen in the Gemara, is we open the books of other Rishonim and see what they had to say when they learned this page, right? So we're really interacting with thousands or hundreds of years of study of this page, right? I often say to people, and this is just an aside, but I just think this is an amazing, amazing thing, right? Like, imagine you're at your Pesach Seder, right? If your family has a Passover Seder. And, halfway through, the part where you open the door and somebody always jokes that, like, somebody is going to walk in, right? Elijah the prophet or somebody. So you open the door, and this very old couple walks in, right? And you say, "Who are you?" And they say, "We're your great-great-great-grandparents," right? And they come in and they sit down, and you say, "Come have a seat. We were just in the middle of the meal. We were just discussing the presidential election," right? And everybody starts getting into Democrat, Republican, whatever, and this old couple is looking at you like, "We don't know anything about this. What's a Democrat? What's a Republican?" She says, "Okay, forget it. Let's talk about the World Cup," right? Portugal just beat France, I just heard, right? Is that right? Yeah. So right, Portugal, France, I can't believe they won. They didn't try so hard. They whatever, right? And they say, "Oh, what's soccer? I don't know what you're talking about," right? So you try to find some common ground with them, right? Anything you would bring up that you and your family talk about, your great-great-great-grandparents probably couldn't relate to it. But if you would say, page 15a of Masechta Rosh Hashanah, they would say, "Oh, yeah, I know that," right? And the difference of opinion between Rashi and Tosfos there, and then there's the Ritva, who says like Rashi, but changes it a little bit, right? That's thousands of years of Jewish tradition, and it's always been exactly the same, right? So that's something that we, from generation to generation to generation, have in common. I often say to people who are becoming more observant, like they sometimes feel like such rebels, like, I'm so different than my family, I'm separating myself out from the family, right? But really what you're doing is you're connecting the things that until 2 or 3 generations ago, probably everybody in your family knew all this stuff, right? So it's really an amazing thing to think about, that like this page has looked like this for thousands of years, and you could look it up and you could discuss it with somebody who lived 1,000 years ago, right? Okay, so those are all good questions. Any other questions on the Talmud? Okay, fine. Now, this commentary, this rabbi named the Rif, Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi, came along, and as I mentioned to you last time, he wrote something that, if you look at it, it looks an awful lot. Sorry, that's my nose. Right? It looks an awful lot like the Gemara, but it's not actually Gemara. He rewrote it, and he only wrote down the parts that are related to halakha. And if there are 2 opinions, he picked the opinion that he thought the halakha should follow, right? The Jewish law should follow, and he only quoted that one. So this is like a shortened version of the Gemara, and now, when you read through it, you're getting more halachas, less of the discussion, the back and forth, which is very, very important when you want to study Gemara. But if I want to know halacha, this is kind of more getting to the bottom line, right? Now, there's no table of contents, there's no index, there's no way to find anything, right? But if I just go through the tractate with the Rif, so I will start to learn what are the halachas that are brought in this book, right? Okay, and now I won't get, different opinions. This is just the tractate called Rosh Hashanah, right? That's all this is. And really, the tractate only goes up until here. There are 34 double-sided pages. This is the tractate. This is all commentary that they put in the back, right? So this is the tractate, right? Okay.
So there's one like that for every holiday?
Well, there happens to be there's a tractate called Rosh Hashanah, there's a tractate called Yuma, which is about Yom Kippur, there's a tractate called Sukkah, there's a tractate called Psachim, right? There's a tractate called Megillah, which is about Purim, right? But then there are other things like the Mishnah that I showed you. These are the tractates not about the holidays, these are about damage law, right? So every tractate you could find in the back, the Rif did something like that, right? Then came along the Rambam. This is a volume of Rambam. It says Mishnah Torah on it. I told you last time that's what he named his book. And the Rambam did something that we said last time was very, very novel. He decided, I'm writing a halacha book with the table of contents, right, by chapter with bullet points that you can look up. If you want to know the laws of Shabbos, they will all be in one place, right? So, for example, this also happens to be the laws of damages. I just pulled it off my shelf, right? So this is the laws of renting laws, of a renter and a rentee, right? And it just says, like, halakha number 1, somebody who rents this is chapter 6, halakha 1, right? Somebody who rents a house to his friend, and it's in like a pit, like a crater or something, So he not only gets to use the wall, but bira gadola, it's part of it's like an apartment, right, inside a bigger building, right? So he gets to use the hallway and the walls as well, like the outside walls, right? Up until, and it keeps going and explains, right? So you have to know where that is in the Gemara. You could just look it up in the laws of rental agreements. Yeah.
So these people studied Torah all day.
Yes.
Right? Because I'm having I'm trying to put it in terms of like my brain capacity, and to like remember 2,000 something pages of like oral law, like I'd just be buzzing. But like they don't study anything else.
Well, no, that's not entirely true. The Rambam was also a doctor, right? In fact, he was the official doctor of the Sultan of Egypt for a part of his life, right? But again, people were incredibly more productive then than they were now. Not only Jewish people, not only religious people, people in general were much more able to compartmentalize, right? Like now I'm doing A, now I'm doing B, right? And they had many fewer distractions, right? And they could just make more use of their hours in the day, right? They were just better at that. You look in all disciplines of what people used to do, 1,000 years ago, and you look at, it's just, they were able to accomplish a lot more. Huh?
I think people are dumber now.
I think so too, right? As I said, the Rambam never got interrupted by his phone, dinging, telling him he had a WhatsApp message, right? Like when he was learning Torah, right? And by the way, when the sun went down, everybody was in their house, and if you happen to have a candle, so then you could learn all night long, because in the winter the sun goes down at 5 o'clock at night. There are no lights outside. Nobody's going outside in the dark, right? So they had all night to learn Torah. If you wanted to go to sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning, you go from 5 p.m. till 1 o'clock in the morning to do nothing but learn Torah, right? Which is a different reality, right? Okay, so the Rambam knew all of this, and he was an incredible expert in it, right? And he wrote about everything. I mean, I just opened now to the laws of lending and borrowing things, right? And now here are the laws of court proceedings, like how courts work. And this is the laws of inheritance, right? And this is the laws of testimony, how testimony works, right? And this is how we relate to people, Jews who are not religious, right? Now that shows up in halakha, right? And this is about the laws of mourning, right? And this is about the laws of kings, right? Etc.
Do we do this now?
Yes.
100% Rambam stuff?
No, but the Rambam did, right? The Rambam was one of, this is his opinion.
But these are references, for sure.
Yes, right? Again, the Rif had his opinion. I took him down. The Rif had his opinion. The Rambam had his opinion. And then the other one we mentioned was the Rosh, who also had his opinion. Right? And sometimes they all agreed and sometimes they didn't. Yeah.
Why did the Rambam also call them Maimonides?
So we mentioned last time, right, that all of these are not people's names. Rashi, right, these are acronyms. So the Rambam was named Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, right? So he was from the house of Maimon. Maimonides means from the house of Maimon, right? Same thing with the Ramban. He was called Nachmanides because he's from the house of Nachman. His name was Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, right? If you go to Tiberias and visit the Rambam's grave, right across from the Rambam's grave is his father's grave, the grave of Maimon, right? So that's why they call him that. I believe that's Greek, Latin. What?
I like that Shabbos song, Rabbi Nachman.
Yeah, right. A different Rabbi Nachman, though. That wasn't the Rambam's father, the Ramban's father. Yeah. Okay, but in any case, so the Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh did this. They wrote their halakha books. The Rif and the Rosh were written in the order of the Gemara. The Rambam actually went out of his way and wrote a new halakha book. Again, we mentioned that was so controversial that at the times of the Rambam, his books were burned. Right? And there were big segments of the Jewish people who said, we got to get rid of this guy. Today, everybody knows the Rambam, right? And everybody, he's completely accepted. Okay, now, if I wanted to know halacha now, I have 3 places to look. The Rif, the Rosh, and the Rambam. And there are others too, right? But these are the main 3. So the problem is, as we said last time, 3 Jews, lots of opinions, right? So what do? Am I allowed to, throw out a question, am I allowed to brush my hair on Shabbos? Am I allowed to tie my shoes on Shabbos? So let's say the Rif says, or let's say, am I allowed to tie a double knot on Shabbos in my shoes? That's actually discussed, right? So let's say the Rif says yes, the Rambam says no, and the Rosh says yes, but only if you did it with your left hand, right? I'm making that up, but let's say, right? So what do? I'm just a simple Jew. I just want to know what to do, right? Okay, so came along a man whose name was Rabbi Yaakov, the son of Asher. Where have we heard Asher before? Whose name over here was Asher? We got a 33% chance. No? No? The Rosh. Very good. Right? Rabbeinu Asher. His son came along and said, I'm going to put an end to this. I am going to write a book taking from these three, mainly from these three. Right? I'm going to write a book, and this book will be, when there's a difference of opinion, I will decide how the Jewish people should follow, and my book will now be the source of Jewish law. So when you want to know a law, you don't need to look at all three of them. You can just look at my book. If it's 2 out of 3, right, I'll follow 2 out of 3, or if there's a good logic behind one of them, I will decide what we should do for you, and you will find it. That book was called the Torah. Yeah, and it's actually called the Arba Turim, which means the 4 pillars, which is a phrase taken from the Chumash, from the section about the building of the tabernacle, right? He called it the 4 pillars because he broke up his book into 4 sections, right? One called Orach Chaim, which means ways of life, which is about daily living. Yoradeya. Again, these are all phrases also taken from Tanakh. Yoradeya is the laws of prohibited and permitted things. Even Ha'ezer is mostly things that have to do with marriage. And Choshen Mishpat is things that have to do with business. He divided it up into these 4 categories, right? Made 4 different books. Again, each book today is several volumes, right? The one I showed you, I will show you soon one volume, which this is only volume Aleph of Orach Chaim, right? So they break up into these books, and he wrote a book of Jewish law. And that was designed to be, now everybody in the world can look and find your Jewish law here, right?
All during the Rishonim.
The Torah was during the times of the Rishonim. Yes, it was somewhere probably around, let's say the 1400s, right? Okay, now what's the first thing that happens when a book gets written? What do other Jews do?
Scrutinize.
Good, and then write commentary, right? So rabbis started, now when you learn Judaism, remember it started with learning the Mishnah, then you learn the Gemara, then you learn the Mishnah and Gemara with the Rishonim, then you learn the Mishnah and the Gemara with the Rishonim, all the way through to see what the Torah says, right? And then you write a commentary on the Torah. So one of the people who wrote a commentary on the Torah was a man named Rabbi Yosef Cairo. Anybody ever hear of him?
Yeah.
Good. Where did he live?
Wasn't he from like Sfat area?
Yes, not only the Sfat area, Sfat. He actually was from Spain, and then he moved later in his life to Tzfat. If you've ever been, there's a synagogue in Tzfat. You have to walk through a jewelry store to go into. You walk into the jewelry store, and then you make a right into the synagogue. It's got like couches around, and everything's blue in there. That's not surprising. Everything in Tzfat is blue, right? That was Rabbi Yosef Cairo's shul, right, his synagogue. And right next to that, there's this little cave, right? It's in the back of the shul.
Is that where the angels talk to him?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So yes. So that was where he wrote his commentary on the Torah, right? We'll talk about what you're talking about in a minute. Okay. Now he wrote a commentary on the Torah, which was called the Beit Yosef, or the Beis Yosef, depending on if you're Ashkenazi or Sephardi, right? The Beit Yosef, right? And he wrote, it means the house of Yosef, which was his name. And he wrote in his commentary, he explained the Torah, he explained where the Torah got it from, he explained that actually this thing that he's talking about now is a machlokus between the Rambam and the Rif, and here's why the Torah said like the Rif, right? And that really there are 2 different understandings of the Rif, and if he had understood it differently, he would have written something else, but he understood it like others, like those learn the Rif, and not like those learn the Rif. Yeah.
So is that considered the laws of halacha that he mean, or like how to say it?
The what?
Like laws he mean, or like I guess wrote down. Is that what that is?
What do you mean the laws?
Did he write down like halacha or like laws or something?
Hang on. We'll get there.
It's not that?
That's not that.
Oh.
Okay? Now, what this was a commentary that if you look in the Torah today, around the sides you have different commentators. One of them, the most well-known, is Rav Yosef Karo, the Beis Yosef. Okay? There's also a commentator called the Bach. There are other commentators, but he was the main one. Right? Now, the Beis Yosef eventually decided, you know what? We need a new version of this book. I'm not just going to write a commentary on this book. For a variety of reasons, he decided I'm actually going to rewrite the book. Right? I'm going to base it on the Torah. I'm going to stick with his 4 arbaturim, his 4 pillars, right? And I will stick in the same order that he went. But I don't always agree with him. So sometimes I'll change the wording around because I disagree slightly. Sometimes I will not say the same thing as him, right? This is going to be my version of the Torah, right? And Rav Yosef Karo wrote that down, and that is called shulchan aruch. What does shulchan aruch mean? What does shulchan mean? Table. What does aruch mean? This is a trick question.
Nothing? Doesn't exist?
No, it does mean something. Aruch with an aleph means long, but this is aruch with an ayin, which means set, laid out. Right? It's literally the laid table. We don't use that phrase in America and England, they do, right? But the set table is the laid table, right? And that is Rav Yosef Karo's book, based on the Torah, which itself was based on the Rif, the Rosh, and the Rambam. They are 3 of the Rishonim, basing what they wrote on the Gemara and the Mishnah, right? He wrote it all down in one thing called the set table. Yeah.
Isn't that a problem that everyone keeps changing based on how they think it is?
Well,
Like,
listen.
It's always changed based on like their version of it.
Again, remember, they're not coming up with any new ideas. What they're doing is saying, which opinion do we follow?
But
Right.
it's like always changing.
Yes, it is always changing.
Is that a problem?
No, because that, as we discussed, that's
I
how
mean,
the...
like you change your slightly different changes. Like,
Most of them are very slight. Some of them are bigger, right? The point is, this is how the halachic system was meant to be. This is how the system of, from the moment Hashem gave the oral Torah to Moshe on Sinai, we are supposed to be doing this.
but then if we're like the kind of people, like mostly girls don't study Talmud and stuff, so like how do we know that what we're doing is good? Like sometimes it's annoying 'cause it's just like we're following these people and they all have different opinions.
Right. So look, so that's one of the reasons why we're discussing this, right? So that you should know that hopefully, right? Meaning today, we're going to go further than this, but so far, if the Shulchan Aruch says something, we do it, right? There are very few exceptions to that rule. That if the Shulchan Aruch says it and you say, but the Torah disagreed with him, we say, no, we follow the Shulchan Aruch, right? We're going to keep going, we're not done yet. But, right, so what if I say, well, it says this in the Shulchan Aruch, but I see that Tosfos disagreed. That's not what Tosfos said. So we said, yes, Tosfos had a certain opinion. The Rambam didn't follow that opinion of Tosfos. The Torah was based on the Rambam, and the Shulchan Aruch is ruling like the Torah, or something like that, right? What we do when we study halacha today is that we actually work our way from the verses in the written Torah all the way through here, and then the commentators on the Shulchan Aruch, right? So for example, right, I will sometimes I want to learn about a specific halacha, so I won't start here, I'll start here. There's a Mishnah. Or maybe that Mishnah is based on one verse in the Torah, right? The Torah says it's one line, the Mishnah says, here's what that means. The Gemara says, here's what that Mishnah means, and I have to spend a bunch of time learning a whole page of Gemara, right? Or all several pages of Gemara. Then learn what all the different Rishonim, how they learned that Gemara. See how that made its way into the Rif, the Rosh, and the Rambam. See how the Torah ruled. Read the Beis Yosef's explanation of that sentence in the Torah, right? And then see how the Beis Yosef himself wrote it in the Shulchan Aruch. And then we can keep going, we'll get there, right? So again, why did he call it the laid table? If I open the Shulchan Aruch, this is the volume of the Shulchan Aruch, right? So if I open this up, here's our halacha. This is Orach Chaim 488, halacha 1. Shacharis nichnasim lebeis hakneses v'korim ha'zmiro shel Shabbos mispalim tefillah shacharis. This is talking about what should be the order of the prayers in the morning of Pesach, right? And I say, okay, here you go. It says you say Hallel on the first day of Pesach, right? Now, if I want to know the halacha, do I say Hallel or not on Pesach? I could say, well, let me look it up. Here it is, the order of the prayers in the morning of Pesach, and it says, yes, we say all of Hallel, right? And we make a bracha on it, okay? Now, based on everything we've saying, right, that's like literally the tip of the iceberg, right? It was supposed to be, well, you know what? Let me go learn the whole written Torah, and then all of the Mishnayos, and then all 2,711 pages of the Gemara, and become expert in all of that, and then I'll get back to you about that question, right? But now that there's a Shulchan Aruch, he says, look, I'm just going to lay it all out for you on the table, right? Literally. This is all laid out for you, right? And all you have to do is look it up. Now, you know you're just looking at the tip of the iceberg, and this information all goes all the way back to here, and even before that, it goes all the way back to Moshe getting the Torah from Hashem at Sinai, right? And you should have to work through it and try to work through all the different ways of understanding that Mishnah could mean this or it could mean that, and then the Gemara, there are 3 different opinions, and should we follow this one or should we follow that one? And if we follow that one, what about this approach to what that one means versus that approach to what that means? The Shulchan Aruch says, here it is. It's all on the table for you. Okay? Now, Rav Yosef Karo we mentioned was from Spain. Ashkenazi or Sephardi? Sephardi. So the problem is, this is all very nice, but what about Ashkenazi, who sometimes do things differently than Sephardi, right? Now, there was a man named Rabbi Moshe Isserlis, who at the same time that Rav Yosef Karo was doing this, he was writing something very similar, right? He was writing his own, he was Ashkenazi. He was, I believe, from Poland, right? And he was writing his own version of the Shulchan Aruch. Now, they weren't following each other on Twitter, right? So neither one knew that the other one was doing it, but really there were 2 people in the world doing exactly the same thing. So today we probably would think that they'd form competing companies, and you'd end up with Coke and Pepsi or something like that, right? But he said, once he found out about Rav Yosef Karo, he said, listen, I don't want to compete. If you're doing this, that's great. I will stop doing what I'm doing. Right? Unbelievable humility to be able to do that. But he said, you know what? We do have one advantage. I'm Ashkenazi, you're Sephardi. Let me go through your book. It's your book. And I will make notes every time the Ashkenazim do something different than the Sephardim do. Right? So he did, and he wrote little, they call it a gloss, right? In English, a little addendums every time the Ashkenazim do something different than the Sephardim. Right? He said, you called your book the Shulchan Aruch. I'm going to call my book the Mapa. What is a Mapa? A tablecloth. Right? See, they had senses of humor even back then. Right? So he said, you created the Shulchan Aruch. I'm just going to put the tablecloth on top, and then it will be a complete book. Now, the Shulchan Aruch plus the Mapa. Right? This is written by Rav Karo. This is written by Rabbi Moshe Isserlis, who we refer to as, anybody know?
It says it here as Rama.
Very good. Right? Rabbi Moshe Isserlis, with an aleph. Right? The Ramah. Right? So the Ramah, the Shulchan Aruch, with the additions of the Ramah, is a book for all Jews, Sephardi and Ashkenazi, and it is we translate in English into the code of Jewish law. Right? This is where we look when we want to know Jewish law. Right? The Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law.
Oh.
Yeah.
But its literal translation is the second.
Yeah, correct. Right? Now look, again, here's a page of Shulchan Aruch. Right? Lest you think that this is the end of Jewish history. Right? This is the Shulchan Aruch. This and this are commentary. All of this is commentary. Right? In the back, there's more commentary. Right? Things did not just stop just because the Shulchan Aruch did this, but just like the Mishnah in its time and the Gemara in its time became the new text that people studied from. So when people want to study halakha, this is where they get it from, right? They write commentary on it, and they compare it with the Torah, and they try to trace it all the way back to here, but this today is the code of Jewish law, okay? Now, just going on for a minute, right? One of the things that happened after that, right, is that about 150 years ago, a man named the Chafetz Chaim came along, right? The Chafetz Chaim took the Shulchan Aruch, and he wrote commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, quoting from all of the sources that talked about, one of the problems you have with the halakha book is, what about this new case that came up? What about that new case that came up? What about that new case that came up, as we've discussed, right? So you always need somebody to say, okay, and by the way, today, here's how we do it, and there are different opinions about what the Shulchan Aruch meant by that, and this new case that came up, here's how we apply the Shulchan Aruch to this new case, right? And he wrote that in what we call the Mishnah Brura, which means the clear teaching, right? The Mishnah Brura,
That was like today's time?
yes, was only written on Orach Chaim, right? He didn't write it on the rest. He only wrote it on Orach Chaim, which is the ways of life, which includes a lot of halakha, right? And he wrote the Mishnah Brura. today, most of the questions you would have, right? The Chafetz Chaim. Right? Most of the questions you would have today, when you would go ask a rabbi, they would probably look it up in the Mishnah Berurah, right? And they would see, here's what the Shulchan Aruch says, here's what the Mishnah Berurah says, and then they might say, oh, the Mishnah Berurah references something else, I'll look it up over there, right? But this is where, really today, we use as our reference point. This was in the 1850s, I believe, right? Now, today, you could walk into the Neve library, and there are books in every language on specific topics, right? So now, like this is just in going in the order of the Shulchan Aruch, just bring a commentary. But today, as many of you have, I'm sure, you can get a book about the laws of Shabbos, or the laws of keeping kosher. Or I just saw a book on the laws of, there's a mitzvah in the Torah to scare away the mother bird before you take eggs. You're not allowed to take eggs from in front of the mother while the mother's there, so you have to scare away the mother bird before you take the eggs, right? There's a whole book on the laws of how to do that, right? There's a book on the laws of honoring your parents. There's a book on Jewish ethics, right? Rabbi Cohen wrote one of them, right? There are books on any topic you want to read about. You could just open up the book. Now, where did the book get it from? They're not just making it up. He's getting it from here. Right? Either the Mishnah Berurah, if it's something in Orach Chaim, or just the Shulchan Aruch in general. And he'll quote, right, here's what it says in the Shulchan Aruch, and here's where the Shulchan Aruch got it from, because the Torah doesn't say it like that, but that's because the Torah is following the Rambam, and the Shulchan Aruch paskin rules that we follow the Rosh, right? And he'll explain to you, sometimes in the footnotes on the bottom, this is how I know what I know, right? But so people, today, a lot of the work going into books has been to go through all of these thousands of years of these at least 1,500 years of information and put it into more and more and more easily usable forms. Yeah.
So Moshe was given the oral Torah and then he wrote it down. So it's just like, should we start off with one copy?
The oral Torah. Again, Moshe didn't write it down. Moshe just taught it to everybody. And then it got passed down generation to generation to generation until Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, in about the year 200, wrote it down. And there wasn't just one copy. Right? And then it was distributed to the masses. By the way, the first Jewish book, what year was the printing press invented? 15 something, around 1500. Right? The Shulchan Aruch was written in about 1500. This was the first book, Jewish book, to be printed with the printing press. Right? And that also helped it become the authoritative book, code of Jewish law, because it became very easily accessible very quickly. Right? Okay, we'll continue with this, and we're also going to go back and talk about rabbinic authority in the next couple of classes.